This is the GameSir X4 Aileron, a controller designed for smartphones with a pretty unique form factor, involving two sides that magnet together and connect via a 2.4 GHz connection. It's a unique product to be sure, but I can't help but think that this controller misses the mark in more than one way, especially when compared to the GameSir G8 Galileo, its predecessor. We're going to get a little bit more into this after a quick unboxing. First of all though, I want to say a big thanks to GameSir for sending me this controller to review. As always, they didn't see this video before it's gone live, nor did they have any influence over it, as I'm sure you'll come to understand. Inside the very well packaged box is a carrying case, with a pretty nice GameSir lanyard on the zipper, and the X4 Aileron branding too. It's a really quality looking package for a very quality controller. You'll also get GameSir's usual selection of paraphernalia, including a USB-C cable, and various paperwork, including a trial for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which some people might enjoy. You also get the holographic GameSir chicken sticker as usual. Opening up this carrying case, you're going to be greeted by something pretty surprising. The first of which is that this is an incredibly high quality case. I mean, just look at this branding and the custom molding of it. It looks absolutely fantastic and it feels really sturdy. You're also going to see a selection of analog stick caps and an alternative D-pad. And then the controller itself, shrouded by this, unfortunately not very stuck-on plastic. I'm saying it's not very satisfying to take off. And believe it or not, this is the GameSir X4 Aileron. Pretty weird, right? But this thing has more than a few party tricks, the first of which is its magnetic connection. When this controller is magneted closed, it's fairly compact, but not quite as compact as I would have thought. And also, having the two halves connected like this lets you charge it through the USB-C port. And when you want to use the controller, you simply just pull it apart. Here are the two halves of the X4 Aileron. And the idea is that these two connect to each other wirelessly while the controller's in use. And they use a multi-channel 2.4 GHz connection, which means that there's essentially no latency between the two. At least no discernible latency. For the record, these are rubber pads that go in your controller to better fit your phone or protect it or something like that. And I just realized it says it right here. Rubber cushion for a tighter fit on thinner or caseless devices. There we go. Anyway, so here's the X4. And it's just as easy to put back together. The whole thing is fairly sturdy. I'm shaking it quite a lot right now, and it's definitely not going anywhere at all. So that's a good sign. Now I was kind of hoping when I got this controller that holding it like this would kind of feel like Joycons. With the GameSir G8 Galileo, I really like using it as a standalone controller. Sorry, I mean the G8 Plus. And I wanted to do something similar with the X4, because I thought kind of a controller that was together like this, and then a part Joy-Con style would be really cool. And it does technically work like that. You can just connect this with Bluetooth to anything, but it's just not very comfortable, to be honest. These grips do very little to improve the comfort of the controller, and when you hold it, your fingers just kind of bash into this flat part here, and there's really not a lot of grip here at all. My fingers tend to wrap around the grips, but not in a comfortable way. More like the grip is kind of in the way, and makes it an uncomfortable, well, grip. That was probably the worst sentence I've ever uttered on this channel, but hopefully you understand what I mean. Your eyes might have already been drawn to these fluorescent lime green levers, and basically pulling this up will turn on the controller, and dropping it down will turn it off. You can, however, turn it on independently of the grip, I mean the lever, by holding down the Xbox button. And the same works with the right hand side as well. Just push it up, and the controller will automatically turn on, and then these two will also sync up and connect together automatically. I think you can turn the right hand side on independently. Yeah, there you go. Just hold this upload button, whatever that is. So anyway, once your controller is open like this, you can then connect it to your device. So here I've got my Android smartphone. I'm just going to go into Bluetooth, pair a new device, and the X4A for Xbox will appear right away. And it just pairs like any other controller. So let's jump into a game. This is TMNT Shredder's Revenge. I'm really glad that this is available on Android and without a Netflix subscription now. So let me go ahead and pop my controller in here, inside the case. So as you can see, my phone is now inside the controller and it's still in its case as well. It's connected with Bluetooth, with the two sides being connected to each other. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose a character here. I'm a Donatello kind of guy. And here we are in the game. And as you might be able to hear already, unless I edit it out in post, is that this is a very, very clicky controller. Every single input on this controller is super duper clicky. And so that might not be to absolutely everybody's preference, but I absolutely love it. In fact, I think that the D-pad and face buttons of this device are some of my favorite that GameSir have ever put out. Everything is super fast and super responsive. There's tons of tactile feedback when you press a button, although I do admit that I think that this is going to be too loud to play for some people, especially people who have a sleeping baby, which thankfully right now is in another room. But it's a super clicky but very fun experience that kind of reminds me a little bit of an arcade, and I suppose playing with a game like this just enhances that feeling. Let's take a closer look at this D-pad. It's a floating, kind of bowl-like D-pad, but not really actually. It's just that it's in a round shape with a bowl-like profile, but then you also have a very distinct cross shape too. I guess I could call this a hybrid D-pad and circle pad. And I gotta say, I think this is an absolutely fantastic input on this controller. It just feels so satisfying. If you've watched my review of the FlyDigi Vader 4 Pro, or any FlyDigi controller to be honest, you're going to know that I really love these clicky D-pads, and this is absolutely no exception. It feels absolutely fantastic, it's super responsive, oh, just so satisfying, just listen to that. And a little bit closer to the mic. It's just awesome and it feels absolutely fantastic. I cannot stress it enough. When we come to the face buttons, to be honest, it's a similar story. These have that kind of glossy style, similar to the Steam Deck, except that these as well are super clicky micro switches. As you can see here, there is quite a bit of travel for the size of the buttons and for the clicky profile, which is definitely welcome. And they have a similar ultra high-pitched clickiness. They're very, very, very light to push, but not too much, I would say. And again, just a really satisfying input. I absolutely love both the D-pad and the face buttons on this controller. And if you're looking at it from a raw, retro game control perspective, I don't think you can really go wrong. They're absolutely awesome. So let's go ahead and switch to a more modern game. This is Combat Master, one of my favorite Android games. It's a super fast-paced first-person shooter that relies heavily on accurate analog sticks and responsive triggers. And as expected, the X4 has absolutely no trouble with this game. The analog sticks in particular are very tall, and they have a metal shaft along with an anti-friction ring. And I gotta say, this RGB combined with that metal shaft just looks absolutely awesome. I really, really like it. Also, the analog sticks, of course, just pops off, and you can put any of the included covers in. For example, I'm a big fan of this convex one. So I think I'll just go ahead and pop that on right now. Just like that. That feels much better to me. So the analog sticks here are very responsive, they're very tall, and they feel absolutely great. In fact, I think that these are some of the nicest analog sticks that GameSir has put on a controller yet. And when it comes to the shoulder buttons and triggers, they're also really, really nice. Once again, we have ultra clicky micro switches here on the L1 and R1 buttons. These are super responsive, really tactile, and just feel overall great. Though I would say that if I were to criticize anything, it would be that these buttons are just a little bit too stiff for my liking. I think that maybe they should have reduced the cushioning a bit just so it's a little bit easier to press. The analog triggers, on the other hand, are kind of interesting. They have a very, very short throw, the kind of which I find pretty appropriate for a mobile controller. And even though the trigger itself is pretty small, it's very easy to hold your finger on and use. The triggers are also a little bit firmer than I would expect, but I think that that works in the controller's favor. It means that you can hold your fingers on them with a tight grip on the controller without accidentally pushing the trigger down, which as we'll discuss shortly is pretty important for this. So here we have a mobile controller with honestly some of my favorite inputs on any of the ones that I've tried. In fact, I love this clicky D-pad and the clicky face buttons more than I enjoy the inputs on any of GameSir's other devices. I think the analog sticks feel really, really high quality and well tuned. The shoulders, while just a little bit stiff, are still perfectly fine. And I think the triggers are really, really good actually. So with all that in mind, what do I not like about the X4A? The first thing is going to be the grip. Because regardless of how great these inputs are and how much I've just gushed on them, it doesn't really matter because this controller is just supremely uncomfortable to use. As I was talking about earlier, these grips really do not help you at all. In fact, I feel like they're just kind of in the way, and this would have been overall more comfortable if it were just flat across. If you just cleaved this grip off, I actually think this would be more comfortable. But as it stands, it's just really uncomfortable to hold. The flat parts here get in the way of your hands, and make you kind of spread your fingers out, and it is just not a very nice experience at all. In fact, I haven't been able to find a single way to grip this controller that was comfortable after about 10 minutes of play. It is just really, really uncomfortable. I feel like I don't really need to go in a lot of detail on this point because it's just flat not comfortable, and so I don't really know what to say about it other than that. I would literally not pick up this controller because of it. And after testing it for my review, other than making this video itself, I haven't picked this up since then either. And that's just such a shame because these inputs are great. They're just ruined by the dreadful grip. And there's another aspect of this controller that makes it just unpleasant to use. It's really uncomfortable to hold, sure, but the worst part is this. The left side of this controller is very secure because it has more of a brace thanks to this longer section on the back here. But the right hand side is a lot shorter, and it just wobbles. And this wobbles in every phone that I've tried in it, which is the Poco X5 5G, this one, the Cubot Max 5, which is a lot bigger, and the iPhone 16. They all have a terrible amount of wobble that is just extremely unpleasant, and the more intense you start to play, the more you're going to notice this wobbling. And yeah, GameSir should have just found some kind of way to make this more secure on the right hand side, because as it stands, this is just unusable, to be honest. And yeah, it is just not pleasant at all. Well, anyway, there's another thing that I don't like about the X4A. And it basically comes down to how it contrasts with the GameSir G8 Galileo. Or rather the G8 Plus, I keep forgetting to say I'm talking about the Plus model here. Both of these are Bluetooth controllers. But the difference between them is that the G8 Plus works with literally anything. You can toss in a tablet, a smartphone, a Nintendo Switch. I've even used it with a laptop. It works with 8-inch tablets, but then you can also pop it open, like that, and connect it to a 10-inch, 12-inch, 14-inch tablet, whatever you want. It works with iPhone, with iPad, with all of that stuff. You can even use it standalone as a normal controller, just like a wireless controller to your PC or whatever. And regardless of being a telescopic controller for mobile devices, it works really well in that regard. I've even thrown a keyboard and trackpad combo into this controller and used it as a controller keyboard combo. You can do anything with the G8 Galileo, but with the X4A, it's really just for your smartphone. Nothing else is going to fit in here, and I've tried my darndest. The Nintendo Switch doesn't fit, tablets don't fit. Using it without a device in the middle is even more uncomfortable than using it with a device in the middle, and it's just really a shame that it doesn't have that same air of flexibility and innovation that the G8 Plus has. So let's take this out real quick, which is pretty satisfying. And just to show what I'm talking about, here's my very heavily used and smudged Nintendo Switch OLED. And yeah, this just isn't going to fit at all. And it's all because of these green levers. The thing is that these green levers help to secure your device. So throwing my phone back in there, you can see this is actually holding my phone in place. Without this, the whole thing would be really wobbly. But this also ruins this controller's potential for anything else. And I think this is such a missed opportunity of a design, because this does come out a little bit further than this because it can support slightly bigger phones. But I wish that they had just given you the chance to extend this. Like, give me an extension kit, or maybe just make it pop out and be a bit longer. If it were just a couple of centimeters longer, it would fit at least the Switch. But as it stands right now, it just doesn't. Outside of its flexibility, one of the big selling points for this controller is portability. Because of course it's in two halves, and you can just slot it together like this. It's super solid, and you can, I guess, toss this in your bag just like this. In that regard, this is very good. It is very, very portable. But the problem with it is that once you add the case, it's like not at all. So here is said case, and I'm just going to drop this in here and close this up. And this is still a pretty massive box to keep in my bag, or to throw in my bag or suitcase or whatever. It has a substantial footprint. So even though I complimented this case earlier, and I think it's a great case in its own right, especially one that's included in the heavily expensive price, I just think this case is kind of silly, because it makes the X4A much bigger than it needs to be during travel. And I honestly think that what they should have done here is given you some kind of way to compact this device into a very, very small plastic case. Rather than a big zip-up thing, they should have just given you a clip-around plastic case. Perhaps even it would be smart to remove the analog sticks, like that, and just take this with you with a little bit of protection for the inputs. If that were the case, then I would compliment this on its portability much more. But as it stands, with this huge carrying case, the portability aspect is just kind of wasted. Now here's a cheap case I got from my GameSir G8 on AliExpress. This thing cost me about £6. Now it is for the original G8, so it's just a little bit short, but I've seen a G8 Plus version on AliExpress as well, which would fit better. But even so, if I just squeeze this in here, I mean, honestly, there's really not a huge amount of difference between these two in terms of portability. And in fact, I would even say that the longer profile of the G8 Plus case makes it a little bit more convenient to fit into your bag or suitcase. So whereas the X4A is focused on portability, I think that when it really comes down to it, it's not actually very portable at all. And bear in mind, I'm still talking about this as if the analog sticks have been removed. As soon as these sticks are back on there, these are going to be snagging on everything if you don't have it in a case. So yeah, I'm really just thinking that this isn't actually as portable as it originally looks. And all things considered, I don't think it's any more portable than the G8 Plus is. And that's a superior controller in every way. So in the end, I think what the X4A is a series of great controls. But that's it. It has great controls that I love using, which is attached to a controller that's too restrictive, not portable enough, and most importantly, just extremely, extremely uncomfortable to hold. And that is all at an eye-watering price of around $100 US. You can get it a bit cheaper on AliExpress, but if you want it with Amazon Prime shipping or anything like that, you should expect to pay around $100. This is vastly more expensive than the vastly more flexible, vastly more comfortable, and vastly superior in basically every way GameSir G8 Galileo. And so I'm left just wondering, what's the point of the X4A? And that's why I think this is just a big swing and a big miss of a controller. And it's a darn shame too, because GameSir are showing that they still have a lot of really, really great ideas. They just haven't executed on it well enough this time, in my opinion. Well, thanks again to GameSir for sending me this controller to review. It's definitely a cool one that I just, well, don't like at all, so sorry, I guess. If you do like the look of this though, and you think this is going to work for you, check the description box below for a link to where you can buy the GameSir X4A. I'll try and put links to the cheapest place I can find it on AliExpress, and some Amazon links too. If you do use my links, you'll support the channel at no extra cost to you, and I would greatly appreciate that. As for me though, this is one that I probably won't be going back to.